Okay, and here we go. And 5, 4. And we're back. And starting off 2020 with our second show, I have Dr. Regina Nelson. Regina has been heavy into the endocannabinoid system for many, many years, practically before anybody. And she's with the ECS Therapy Center. And she now has, I guess it's a course. Explain to me what the clinician certification program is, Regina.
Yeah, well, it actually, the idea started back when I was in New Mexico and a patient. So I think it's fair, but it took a long time for me, my writing history along the way. I've had several books, and the first dosing guide I put forward in 2015 was the ECS Therapy Companion Guide, and it's been updated since to the Survivor's Guide to Medical Cannabis. But I was looking at ways of getting classes out in that. And the first session of classes I had, I also got them accredited for CME accreditation through the American Academy of Family Physicians. And I felt like it just gave a really good, solid, educated step up for people coming in the industry. But people really wanted more. And so I developed the clinician certification program. Kind of think of it like clinicians for cannabis. It's the people that are really working closely with patients. The level one course talks about doctor patient communication, it gives you an introduction to the endocannabinoid system, talks about hemp versus cannabis, what are the differences and what are the similarities, and it starts with giving some strategic dosing guidelines.
Uh huh.
And then in the level two is a step up from that with a more in-depth look at the endocannabinoid system, a session on cannabis therapy planning, and then a look at both pediatric patients and veterinary patients. And then the third level is focused more on conditions initially, talking about the main ones we see: cancer, opiate withdrawal and addiction, and then chronic illness. And then the fourth and final component of that module is cannabis and seniors, because that's the largest growing population of medical cannabis patients. So I feel like it just gives people a really strong foundation as educators. I even have built a training network, and I've been licensing the curriculum. Actually, I have trainers licensed in New Mexico. Um,
Uh huh.
David Maldonado, Dominic Romero, and Jody Diavino.
So
And
who
so,
are these? Let me just interrupt for a second. Who are these
mhm.
different level classes for? Okay, is it just for people
Well,
to
they're
educate themselves? I mean, if they have a family member that they want to help. I mean, who is this for, and what can you do with
yeah,
your certification afterwards?
well, I think the level one is really ideal for people coming into the industry, but it's really designed for both, on one hand, medical professionals new to this, and then the general public that is new to this. And then levels two and three are really for those people that are working very closely with patients as caregivers, as bud tenders, as dispensary owners, as I have many cultivators that come through it, again, because if you put your toe in this industry, people ask you questions, and to have a really solid base of understanding about the endocannabinoid system and how cannabis, how you approach this with people so that you're able to give some really common information that is not that common.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's start with that. Okay. So 10 years ago, 90% of the people that are around right now using CBD and knowing about the endocannabinoid system did not know about it. So when
No.
was it first discovered, and how did you get interested in it? And tell us, a lot of people don't know about the receptors and so forth. So in a layman's terms, so we can educate some people today, tell us about what the endocannabinoid system is and who discovered it.
Sure, sure. Well, Dr. Raphael Mechoulam out of Israel led a team of researchers that discovered the endocannabinoid system in the late 1980s. And they did it because they were looking to discover how THC was working in the body. And when they found that THC lit up some receptors, one that they didn't know we had, they knew two that we had to be making something that also lit up those receptors, because you don't have receptors that only are going to respond to something from the outside. They would need to have something endogenous that they would respond to as well. So that led them on the search, and they found anandamide and 2AG, and now they're discovering many other cannabinoids in the body that we make naturally. And so this endocannabinoid system, when I was first introduced to it back in, more than a decade ago, it was considered a primary endocrine system. Now it's very clearly our master regulatory system. And so it has effect over, all of our responses in our body at a cellular level. And so that makes it very complex, very difficult to understand. And we're really just in the infancy of the science of that.
Right,
But
discovering
it's
all this
complex.
stuff is so new.
Right.
So
It
do we have
is.
a definite number of cannabinoid receptors in our bodies, the CB1s and CB2s? Do we know exactly how many we have and where they are at this point?
We don't know how many of them we have. We have the two types of receptors, CB1 and CB2, the cannabinoid receptors 1 and 2. There's talk that there may be a third receptor. And I think there's a lot of confusion. Early science, going back to like the 1940s and 50s, did some research on like the endovannelloid system, and we're starting to, and the capsaicin receptor systems, which are called the TRPV1 systems. And those TRP systems and the endovannelloid systems are now, some of it's being reclassified into endocannabinoid, and it is that they're all food driven systems and they're fat driven systems, and they have effect again at a cellular level. And any cell in your body can be a cannabinoid receptor. And so, there's not a way that you can pinpoint, like, hey, I have endocannabinoids here. You have endocannabinoids everywhere. It would be a pixelated picture of yourself.
So I want to dispel or one thing, okay, about the use of cannabis in pregnancies. Okay, I've
Uh-huh.
read stories to where women have gotten in trouble because their breast milk was tested and it came out with some cannabinoids in it, and they weren't using cannabis. So what's that all about?
Well, we do express our own anandamide into the breast milk, and anandamide is the body's natural THC. What's interesting is none of us would be here without this natural THC. For embryo to implant into the uterus, the mother must have a kind of a surge of anandamide, and that continues through her pregnancy. But after she gives birth, it goes up even higher because she begins to express anandamide into her breast milk. And there was some confusion about that early on. It's very clear now what is what, but there's still a lot of people that don't think that pregnant women or women who are breastfeeding should be using cannabis. And we have no studies that show that there are any detriments to that. We, in fact, have people now giving cannabinoid therapy to babies and even preterm babies, particularly preterm babies, because we know that cannabinoids, again, at a cellular level, protect healthy cells. And so all of the things that we know, we're really still dealing with myths and rumors. And so much of that research that's built on THC isn't built on plant-based THC. It's built on synthetic THC because in order to test it, the scientists had to develop it because they couldn't get the plant to test it because of its Schedule 1 status. And we're still not too far off of that. So we're not yet seeing the number of, trials going on with the plant that I'd like to be seeing.
Where are the better trials going on? Are they still in Israel and other places like that? Are they still doing better trials than what we have going on here now?
Well, yeah, we often fund those trials in Israel, by the way. Our National Institutes on Drug Abuse often, funds that research, but less than 1% of their budget goes to cannabinoid research. More of it now, maybe 2 to 3%, is being focused on endocannabinoid system research through the National Institutes of Health, because again, this is a master regulatory system that we know virtually nothing about.
So, last week I had a young mother on who's fighting for the use of cannabis for her autistic child. So, do you have any experience, and what have you been reading about the use of cannabis for autism at this point?
Oh wow. That's really kind of been an interesting fight. in Colorado, we got an influx of patients around 2013, 2012, 13, and 14 because of the Sanjay Gupta specials about the little girl, Charlotte, who had Dravet syndrome, which is a specific type of brain condition. Ooh, that's all right. But the thing is that most of the kids who have Dravet syndrome are in the autism spectrum. And when the parents started medicating their kids, the first relief they saw was not necessarily seizure disorder, because sometimes the kids didn't have a seizure but once a month, so you don't know if they're going to seize or not. You start giving them the medicine, you kind of bide your time, you wait and see, and you watch for other results. And what they saw was really positive outcomes in the autism spectrum. And it was those parents who often had two or three kids, but only one presenting with seizures, so they could only legally get a card and medicate one, that really fought so that Colorado now recognizes autism as a condition for which a doctor can give a recommendation for medical cannabis. And so here in Oklahoma, where there's not a list of qualifying conditions, we're seeing doctors recommend very frequently for autism, because parents they see some relief in the CBD area, but they really need a small amount, at least, of THC to see greater results, and that requires a card.
Any ideas what ratio of CBD to THC seems to be working, especially at the beginning when someone's first trying something like this for an autistic child?
Oh, people start all over the place still, just based on what products are available to them in their market. Even now when people, have a medical card, and if all they have available to them is, high THC products, those are often really effective. But I do encourage them to order a good CBD product as well, a good hemp oil product, because now there are many available online, not over Amazon, but through individual websites and things like that, like Palmetto Harmony, which was built by parents who have a child with lissencephaly. The company's named after their daughter Harmony, and they're out of North Carolina. But they source and they test good quality hemp, and there are many. New Mexico is really springing up with a great hemp market, and so if they can recognize a company locally that they can source a good hemp oil product through, that's a good supplement to, because I think people they need a broader spectrum. If you're only shopping for one cannabinoid, you're looking at this too narrowly. The more you broaden that cannabinoid base, often the more positive side effects you'll have from the medication.
Absolutely. Testing is all what this is about, and getting it from a reliable source, the CBD, and anything at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since you mentioned that you're back in Oklahoma, which is your home state, tell me, all I'm reading is that Oklahoma just exploded in 1 year. It's like the fastest growing medical cannabis.
Oh,
yeah. So tell me, how did that happen? Why did it happen? What is the model that's going on there, and are there any downsides to this fast growth?
Oh, wow. That's a lot of questions. So I'll go back to the bill that Chip Paul wrote, State Question 788, that was passed by the voters of Oklahoma. It was a unique bill. And the thing was, is states like Oklahoma had waited too long for medical marijuana. So many of their citizens had fled to Colorado or Oregon or California or Washington, or someplace where they could take their disabled child or take someone else, an adult with disability, and try medical marijuana. And it had become such mainstream news, people were just kind of over it. And the legislature just would not bring forward a good bill. So citizens put it together. Chip Paul brought a small group of people together, and they were like, hey, let's look at, what's out there. And Oklahomans for Health launched State Question 788. And as you know, I was arrested about 4 months before that came through. And I really pushed for it because I knew it would release me from a felony. Because the thing was, I was traveling as a patient. I wasn't traveling as a felon as I was charged. But as a patient, you want to come home. My parents are here. I can't come and visit and take care of my own medical needs. I'm not going to buy on the black market. That's not safe for me. So I bring my medicine with me. And when you get pulled over for maybe not having your blinker on, it becomes a problem. And State Question 788 has really shifted things significantly because it gave Oklahoma its first or the whole nation its first free market in medical cannabis. There are people here from New Mexico, the people that own Shift, own Electroleaf in Oklahoma City. There are people from, I'd guess, all 50 states have come in here, and because it was a free market and there was very little regulation up front. If you have $2,500 and a background check and you fill out the rest of the licensing stuff, you have a license. That doesn't mean you have a successful business. And we've seen huge churns just recently. The last 3 months of the year was a question on who was staying in business and who wasn't. And it came down to a lot of mom and pops who were not good business people, though they were great patients and loved people. They're no longer in business. And there are a lot of big companies that are no longer in business because they didn't know how to deal with the compliance when it came in. When rules and regulations rolled in, and they rolled in right on top of renewals of licensing, you just saw a huge shift here. And a lot of people, particularly with the testing, are struggling to figure out how to stay in it and afford, the testing cost. I think pricing is still really high on medical marijuana for patients. And we're seeing some shifts in Oklahoma City, but not yet Tulsa or the outlying areas. So there's a lot going on.
What's the quality of the medicine like? How do you feel about that?
There's a wide variety of quality. I mean, there's really poor quality and there's really, really high quality. It all depends on where you go, what dispensary it is. Dispensaries that were wholesaling last year, a lot of them went out of business because there still wasn't quite enough product on the market. Because again, you mentioned fastest growing. There's not a short list of medical marijuana conditions for which you can qualify. You can qualify for any for which a doctor will write a recommendation. So stress is a good example of something that is a health issue that causes chronic and long-term illness. But there are doctors here that understand now the rules of the endocannabinoid system and may be willing to write a recommendation for that. And you don't have to fight for autism like you guys are fighting in New Mexico now. You don't have to fight for those weird and odd diseases because anyone qualifies.
We finally have autism on, I believe. I think it was approved recently, so...
I think it was too, but it is this thing of pediatrics still need 2 recommendations from 2 doctors. But I know many doctors that are doing them free for their pediatric patients and for veterans. Recommendations are now as low as like $40 to $60 here. Because a lot of doctors stepped into this and really are running what I would call integrative cannabis practices and focusing on it because they knew institutional policies would mimic the other states. The big hospitals say you can't recommend. And so where do you go and how do you get there affordably? And they quickly saw that patients couldn't afford $125, $150 a pop, even though it's good for 2 years. They needed to lower their prices, and I'm really pleased that they have. Many of them, again, do free clinics.
So what does it cost to go through the state? Does the state charge a fee, or is it just the doctor's evaluation?
No, the state charges a fee. If you're on Medicaid or TANF or any of those things, it's only $20. It's $100 otherwise, but it's good for 2 years.
Am I right that I hear 500,000 patients have been registered already?
That's probably not far off the mark.
Yeah, I hear the
probably not far off the mark. And the thing is, because you can't restrict in cities, counties, and things like that, there are dispensaries in little towns, sometimes a couple of them, and they're nicely everywhere, and it's lovely to go into some of these really small towns and see a really nice dispensary right across from the courthouse square. And they have a good relationship with their law enforcement. They've made a point of that. Things have gone differently in Oklahoma. Oklahoma was very much a state that's had problems with methamphetamines and other things, and I think now their law enforcement is starting to focus in those more critical areas and get their eyes off I think they're pleased overall that medical cannabis is here and it's going well. And we've seen more robberies because we haven't had the regulations in place, and a lot of people were storefronting it with big glass windows and big jars of cannabis, and you got to know people throw rocks through that and try to get in.
Right.
And,
How's the
so
how's the
it's
testing
been a little
situation?
crazy.
How about the testing situation? Are there enough labs? Are there like dispensaries that just aren't testing, and you don't know if you're going to be having mold in it? Or are there any problems, recalls, or anything like that?
Well, there's still a lot of dispensaries that aren't doing the testing. I went in one the other day and I asked to see the testing and got like a no, man, we don't have that. So we turned around and laughed because that's, if you're going to be in business, that's kind of a part of it, but mostly people are testing. A lot of the edibles companies had to make some decisions and shorten their lines to so that they wouldn't have as much testing to do. Over 32 products versus 15 products. And we're seeing more of the cultivators growing more less strains, less variety, trying to get larger crops because of the, if it's 10 pounds, you got to test it. So if you grow 12, you got to test it twice.
Uh huh. What
So you've
about?
got to kind of be in a limit of doing things. And I'm currently opening a grow facility. I never thought I'd actually step in the business, but my brother came to me a few years ago, and we have a company in Rogers County, Oklahoma called Nelson Organics. We've just gotten our lights are going in this week, so we're not there yet, but we're coming in, and we're going to work with a local dispensary called Local Relief here in Tulsa, and provide organic, basically organic cannabis, very high quality, hopefully very reasonable prices to patients, because patients don't have real good access at a reasonable cost to high quality
Well,
cannabis.
Oklahoma is lucky to have you there. Are you giving local seminars and helping to educate people besides your online stuff? Doing anything live there?
We are. So the commission certification is something I've been doing live for the last 3 years, and I've actually developed a training network of trainers now that are also teaching my classes. And so we're now hosting classes. There are two event centers here in Oklahoma. Green Home Wellness is in Moore, Oklahoma, and it's a medical cannabis clinic, and we're using their educational facility there regularly. And then the Flowercraft District in Tulsa is an event center on a cannabis encouraged facility, because that's not regulated yet. So we're able to do classes and allow people the opportunity to medicate on site,
What?
and actually, show cooking classes with real medication on site, which is unique and different from most markets. And so we're going to be hosting the commission certifications there. And so my trainers that will be conducting the certification here, I'll be teaching some of the classes, but Tiffany Stewart with Watch Song, Chef Tony with Green and Clean. There are a lot of my trainers that are going to be teaching free classes to the public, from things like religious development classes to cooking to medicating mom. We're going to have kids and cannabis classes for parents who are medicating their kids. We're going to offer classes for seniors. So people can come and really come into community and get to know each other, and be able to, again, maybe even, if they need to medicate while they're there, they can do that safely on site at the Tulsa facility at
and
least.
and
So I'm
at the
super
same
excited
and at
about
the
that.
same time, the commission certification can be done online as well for people all over the country. Is that correct?
It can. It can. So the online classes are at ecstherapycenter.teachable.com. And you can go to our website, myecstherapy.org, and you can always link to that. And you can see a schedule for the classes here in Oklahoma, because I do know we have people that come from Missouri and Texas to those classes, and Arkansas to those classes as well. And
What's the
and because they can come
reciprocity?
in on a Saturday and get any one of their certifications. Tickets are available. There's links on our website and through the Facebook events, but they're on brown paper tickets. You just have to search for commission.
Absolutely, that's CANNACIAN, commission trademarked.
Yes.
What is the situation with possibly recreational cannabis in Oklahoma at this point? Do you know?
Well, we're currently fighting back some bad bills. Here's the deal with this medical recreational one. I'm going to say I think all use is medical use. That said, politically, we have medical use for medical reasons and adult use for funsies if you're over 21. And what has happened in bringing in adult use is it absorbs the medical programs. Washington, Oregon, California,
Horrible,
Nevada,
horrible situation.
Illinois.
Yeah.
They just fought. Colorado, we fought and fought and fought to keep the medical program. And it's a blessing. We don't want that to happen. This is a new program. And so many people view it as recreational because of this no qualifying conditions. But the reason there isn't a short list of qualifying conditions is because every human has an endocannabinoid system. And cannabis may or may not be helpful for whatever you're currently suffering. But if you speak to a doctor about it and you want to try it and he thinks it might be or she thinks it might be, they can write that recommendation if they agree. And that's a freedom
So
that is unique to this medical program that
California,
should be standard.
so
Should be
California got it
standard.
right then. So California got it right in 1996
They
because
got it right back in 96,
so
and that's why the feds stayed up their butt for 20
yeah,
years.
and that
But they
whole
also came in with their rec and swallowed their medical program.
right. So you know the problem is, and what I've been saying, you know, for a couple of years now, we need to protect medical because there's
Yes.
different end users and different products. There's medical products that need to be had, which are sprays and capsules and suppositories and all kinds of really medical products that are disappearing in different states. So I mean, so what do we do? How do we
Yep.
make this work? Because we're looking to here in New Mexico in a couple of weeks try to fast track a recreational bill that really may kill our medical program, even though the
Well,
governor
and they're going to
says
steal
that.
your plant. They're going to steal your plants if nothing else. Colorado allowed recreational owners to steal 3 months worth of plant count from patients in some cases, and that's that to me is not how you do it. You give the program time to start up on its own, and you regulate it separately um, from the medical program. And you clearly state that you have two in existence. Here's already my frustration. In medical, we pay sales tax. And here in Oklahoma, unfortunately, we pay sales tax plus 7%, which I think is BS and is a bad part of the bill because that treats it more like rec. Because if I go to the pharmacy, I don't pay sales tax
Right, on any of
for
your
anything that I
pharmaceutical,
buy
exactly.
pharmaceutically. And I don't pay that for my groceries, which is my food, and cannabis is a superfood. So all of those things saying recreational, if you're doing it for fun, tax it like beer and alcohol, put it under that. That's fine with me. And, but don't do that same thing and don't take it away from the patients. And what's happened every time, and it happened in Colorado, and it will happen here when rec goes in. It's happening in California. They say they haven't done away with their medical program, but they've all but destroyed it. And the thing is prices have gone back up. Plus, there's this added tax to it. And, so medical patients, if they can't afford their recommendation, yes, they can get flower legally, but a huge penalty cost. And I think we're way overtaxing cannabis. We've got to look at again. We got to look,
Sure.
more at
Well,
alcohol.
the
And
overtaxing is going to drive it to the black market, which is they're all complaining about still
mhm.
now anyway. So, real briefly before we go, what's the hemp laws like in Oklahoma? Are there lots of hemp licenses going out and they cranking out hemp
there are
and
There are. It's been assigned to the Oklahoma State University, and I don't know that they've. I'm going to say honestly, I don't think they've done a great job with it. But Redlands College, a number of colleges have popped up also doing programs, and there are a number of farmers out there with hundreds of acres. Last year, the first crop in, they got hit really hard with the flooding and stuff here, so it was kind of hit or miss. But that's farming,
right? Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's a part of farming,
That's the gamble.
and.
Yeah.
They're still in their pilot program. I think it could be improved. I think there's a lot they can do. I think Oklahoma's an agricultural state, and I think once they start to see how this is cleaning up after the corn and soybeans and other things, hemp's going to become again a number one crop here
Yeah,
in
let's
Oklahoma.
just hope they don't overregulate. That's the killer of everything. So, where can people go get your books if they want to order some books online to read some stuff and give out your websites again for the clinician
Yeah,
certification.
they can go to my website, which is myecstherapy.org, and they can order directly, and or they can go to Amazon and they can search for Regina Nelson, and they'll find all my books and journals there as well. But we appreciate the sales from the website. Those help fund the nonprofit. Like you said, I've run a nonprofit since 2015 as well, the ECS Therapy Center, and I'm super excited about get the opportunity here in Oklahoma to get a research license and to start actively engaging in some patient research, surveying patients for some information. So watch for some information on that through my project Green Hope.
That sounds really exciting to get more research. Even though we've been funding Israel and Dr. Meshulam, Professor Meshulam for 60 years with to millions of dollars.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, Regina Nelson, thank you very
Yeah.
much. I really appreciate it. Welcome home, by the way. I'm glad you're there, and look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it as always.
My pleasure. We'll be right back after this. Peace and love.